The Third Man. In 1949, Carol Reed's The Third Man arrived like a jolt of post-war realism. Set in a fractured Vienna still recovering from World War II, the film transformed bombed-out streets into a visual metaphor for moral disarray. Written by Graham Greene and scored with Anton Karas' distinctive zither theme, it wasn't just film noir, it was noir with a philosophical edge. Orson Welles, playing the enigmatic Harry Lime, appeared for less than 15 minutes but left an outsized impact. His speech atop the Riesenrad Ferris wheel, musing on war, peace, and cuckoo clocks, became one of cinema's most iconic moments. But the real conversation starter was the ending. Holly Martins, portrayed by Joseph Cotten, watches Anna Schmidt walk silently past him. No redemption, no closure. Just unresolved tension that left audiences wanting more. Despite its critical and commercial success, including the Grand Prix at Cannes in 1949 and an Academy Award for Best Cinematography in 1951, the film never received a sequel. Yet the demand was unmistakable. A radio prequel series, The Adventures of Harry Lime, aired from 1951 to 1952, with Welles returning to voice the character. The show explored Lime's earlier escapades, confirming there was still plenty of interest in the morally flexible antihero. So why no follow-up? One major obstacle was legal. Distribution rights were split between London Films in the UK and David O. Selznick's American interests, creating a bureaucratic maze that discouraged further development. Another factor was creative reluctance. Some critics contend the film's power lies in its ambiguity. Extending the story risked diluting that impact. Greene himself revised his original script to match the film's bleaker ending, suggesting he too saw finality in its silence. Still, debate has endured for decades. Some have speculated a sequel centered on Holly Martins, now disillusioned and drifting through Cold War Europe. Others envisioned Anna's survival in a divided Vienna as a new emotional battlefield. Legends hint that Orson Welles once proposed a sequel idea involving espionage, but it never moved forward. In an era when studios eagerly churned out sequels, The Third Man stood apart. It had unresolved characters, a morally rich setting, and a fan base ready for more. Yet that very restraint may be why it's still studied today. The silence at the end wasn't just an artistic choice. It was a bold refusal to conform to Hollywood's sequel machine. Sweet Smell of Success. Sweet Smell of Success, released in 1957, carved out a brutal portrait of media manipulation that critics still dissect today. Burt Lancaster's icy portrayal of newspaper kingpin J.J. Hunsaker, reportedly inspired by gossip titan Walter Winchell, left audiences both disturbed and fascinated. Tony Curtis, as the desperate press agent Sidney Falco, delivered what many consider his finest performance, one that flirted with redemption but never crossed the line. The screenplay, co-written by Clifford Odets and Ernest Lehman, was so sharp the Writers Guild of America later ranked it among the top 101 scripts of all time. But despite the acclaim, the film barely broke even, with box office returns hovering around $2 million, disappointing for backers Hecht Hill Lancaster. Rumors claim tensions between director Alexander McKendrick and the production company over creative control didn't help. Others surmise the film's unyielding tone, coupled with his lukewarm earnings, ended any possibility of a follow-up. And that's where the real loss lies. A continuation could have tracked Hunsaker's descent, or evolution, as television began reshaping public influence in the 1960s. Imagine a sequel where the king of print faces off against the rise of broadcast media. In an era when sequels were rare, this was one film that presented an open path, and never took it. Laura, 1944. Laura delivered one of film noir's most unexpected pivots. The title character, long thought dead, casually re-enters the story halfway through. That twist alone made it a landmark, but the real intrigue lies in what came next, or rather what didn't. Gene Tierney's performance as Laura Hunt blended icy elegance with emotional restraint, while Dana Andrews' detective Mark McPherson brought a quiet intensity that left their relationship unresolved. Critics and audiences took notice. The film became a box office success, won the Academy Award for Best Cinematography, and featured a haunting score by David Raxon that evolved into a jazz standard. Based on Vera Kaspari's novel, the story had more to give. Psychological fallout, romantic tension, and the rare chance to let a femme fatale grow beyond the trope. Yet no sequel followed. Some Film historians suspect that Preminger, known for guarding his creative control, may have resisted turning Laura into a franchise. Legend suggests that studio executives at 20th Century Fox tested the waters, but no second chapter emerged. In an era when standalone films were the norm and serialized storytelling wasn't yet Hollywood's playbook, Laura was left untouched. It was later recognized by the Library of Congress in 1999 for its cultural significance, a singular noir that closed the case too soon. In a Lonely Place. Released in 1950, Columbia Pictures' In a Lonely Place broke the mold of traditional film noir. Instead of a tidy whodunit, it delivered a brooding psychological drama with Humphrey Bogart shedding his usual hard-boiled persona to play Dixon Steele, a screenwriter teetering between brilliance and breakdown. Critics praised the film's emotional complexity, but its modest box office performance made Columbia hesitant to gamble on a sequel. While there's no record of a follow-up ever being seriously considered, the film's ambiguous ending and later acclaim have fueled decades of speculation about what might have come next. Various observers have suggested that a sequel could have been a watershed moment. Hollywood in the 1950s rarely tackled themes like psychological recovery or moral ambiguity across multiple films. A continuation might have explored Steele's slide into isolation, or his attempt at redemption, pushing the boundaries of what post-war cinema dared to examine. Behind the camera, the tension was just as palpable. Director Nicholas Ray and co-star Gloria Graham, who played Laurel, were in the middle of a collapsing marriage during production. They kept the split under wraps, but some suggest that their personal turmoil seeped into the film's tone. Graham's portrayal of a woman torn between love and fear has been interpreted as a reflection of her own emotional state. That raw vulnerability, some argue, is what gives the film its enduring power. In a Lonely Place eventually earned cult status, with directors like Martin Scorsese and Curtis Hanson citing it as a major influence. In 2008, the American Film Institute ranked it among the top 10 mystery films of all time. To Have and Have Not, 1944. To Have and Have Not wasn't just another wartime romance. It was a cinematic spark that ignited one of Hollywood's most iconic on-screen duos. Directed by Howard Hawks and loosely adapted from Ernest Hemingway's novel, the film introduced Lauren Bacall, just 19 at the time, opposite Humphrey Bogart. Their chemistry was electric, both on and off camera, and critics took note. In January of 1945, the New York Times called it a dandy picture, praising its sharp dialogue and moody tone. Yet despite its success, Warner Brothers never followed it up with a sequel. Some point to shifting studio priorities in the post-war era, tightening budgets, changing tastes, and a pivot toward new stars and genres. While Bogart and Bacall reunited in later hits like The Big Sleep and Key Largo, none revisited the character of Harry Morgan, a smuggler with more story to tell. Whispers say Hawks once considered extending Morgan's exploits into post-war intrigue, but those plans never took shape. Some think the film's dramatic departure from Hemingway's original plot discouraged literary purists. Still, its legacy lived on, influencing later genre hybrids like Romancing the Stone, which borrowed its mix of danger, wit, and romance. A sequel might have transformed Bogart's rugged anti-hero into a franchise, but instead, To Have and Have Not remains a one-shot classic, radiant, self-contained, and forever sparking the question, what if? Pickup on South Street. In 1953, Pickup on South Street delivered a Cold War punch that rattled more than just audiences. Directed by Samuel Fuller, the film centered on a streetwise pickpocket who unknowingly snatches microfilm from a communist agent, a bold fusion of noir grit and espionage at a time when Hollywood was walking on political eggshells. Richard Widmark's portrayal of Skip McCoy gave the genre a morally murky anti-hero who didn't wave flags or follow orders, and that ambiguity didn't sit well with federal agencies. The FBI flagged the film for its casual stance on national security, and while no official condemnation from the House Un-American Activities Committee is documented, the film's lack of overt anti-communist messaging didn't go unnoticed. Studios, already nervous under McCarthy-era pressure, distanced themselves from Fuller's subversive tone. According to cinema historian Lisa Dombrowski, Fuller had plans to evolve Skip's story into a reluctant alliance with U.S. intelligence, but mounting political friction and his reputation for defying ideological expectations pushed those ideas off the table. He faced industry resistance that effectively sidelined him. Despite the controversy, the film performed well financially and was later honored in 2018 with preservation in the National Film Registry. Some dare to guess that a sequel could have redefined the noir genre, dragging it deeper into political paranoia and turning Skip into an unlikely Cold War operative. But instead, Fuller's vision was left in the shadows, just like Skip. The Night of the Hunter. The Night of the Hunter was released in 1955 and remains one of the most haunting entries in classic American cinema. Directed by Charles Laughton, his first and only film, it fused expressionist visuals with a chillingly poetic narrative. Robert Mitchum's portrayal of the murderous preacher Harry Powell left a lasting impression, his fingers tattooed with love and hate, becoming an enduring symbol of cinematic menace. Despite its critical acclaim today, the film was a box office disappointment at the time, which likely doomed any chance of a sequel. But the potential was undeniable. The story ends with Powell's arrest, not his demise, and some historians suspect Laughton had weighed broadening Powell's character into a larger commentary on American hypocrisy and religious extremism. Others point to United Artists' financial hesitations and Laughton's own disenchantment with directing as key reasons no second installment took form. Whatever the case, The Night of the Hunter left just enough darkness in its corners to suggest the story wasn't entirely finished. A Place in the Sun. A Place in the Sun, 1951, earned 6 Academy Awards and solidified Montgomery Clift and Elizabeth Taylor as Hollywood icons. But the story's sudden conclusion left a trail of unanswered questions. Clift's character, George Eastman, meets a grim fate, but what about Angela Vickers? Played by Taylor, who was just 17 during filming and 19 at release, Angela's emotional collapse is left unresolved. The source novel, An American Tragedy by Theodore Dreiser, probes deeper into post-trial consequences and the societal double standards, but that material never reached moviegoers. At the time, Taylor's star was rising swiftly, with hits like Father of the Bride and Ivanhoe boosting her profile. A sequel focusing on Angela's reckoning could have been both timely and profitable. So why didn't it happen? Many analysts note that in the 1950s, sequels, especially for prestigious dramas, were considered lowbrow. Paramount, the film's distributor, generally favored standalone triumphs over follow-ups. Some point to the film's sobering themes, class divisions, moral implosion, and capital punishment, as hurdles for a continuing story. Others highlight director George Stevens, known for his exacting standards, who may have deemed the narrative complete. Still, decades later, the silence around Angela's fate remains. Rumors have even floated among cinephiles about a spiritual sequel, but nothing ever emerged. In today's era of legacy sequels, A Place in the Sun remains one of classic Hollywood's most enduring what-ifs. The Red Shoes. In 1948, a British film about a ballerina locked in a struggle between passion and performance reimagined what cinema could be. The Red Shoes, directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, blended ballet with psychological drama in a way that astounded audiences, especially in the United States, where it became an unexpected box office hit. Moira Shearer's portrayal of Victoria Page, a dancer unraveling under the weight of ambition, earned critical acclaim and helped turn the film into a cult favorite. Yet no follow-up ever emerged, and that still sparks curiosity. The film ends on a chilling note. Victoria plunges in front of a train, her fate intriguingly ambiguous. Powell described the story as a clash between spirit and flesh, a tension never resolved. The ballet company is left stunned, her lover Julian is shattered, yet the show continues. That aftermath was ripe for exploration. A sequel could have probed how the troupe rebuilds, how trauma lingers, and whether the bewitched shoes would claim another life. But the door quietly closed. Shearer, a lauded dancer with Sadler's Wells, was hesitant to take on the film role initially, and returned to the stage soon after, wary of further film commitments. Without her, the story lost its core, and Powell and Pressburger believed they'd told a complete tale. British cinema in the late 1940s wasn't designed for sequels, especially not for high-profile art pieces. Some say the Rank organization never pushed for a second film because the Red Shoes' American success didn't immediately mirror its reception at home. Others propose that Powell and Pressburger simply never entertained the notion. Martin Scorsese has hailed The Red Shoes as one of the most visually stunning films ever made, its influence evident in works like Black Swan and La La Land. Yet The Red Shoes danced only once. Though it garnered 5 Academy Award nominations and won 2, for Best Art Direction and Best Original Score, it remains a singular masterpiece, untouched by follow-ups. The Heiress. In 1949, Olivia de Havilland stunned critics with her icy, layered performance in The Heiress, a film that ended not with closure, but with a locked door and a haunting silence. Adapted from Henry James's novel Washington Square, the film took bold liberties, transforming a quiet literary ending into a cinematic gut punch. De Havilland's Catherine Sloper evolves from meek daughter to steely woman in control, a character arc so sharply drawn it practically begged for a continuation. Critics and audiences alike responded. The Heiress took home 4 Academy Awards, including Best Actress and Best Art Direction, and landed 8 nominations overall. Commercially, it held its own. Yet, in spite of its achievements, no second installment arose. One reason, according to cinematic researchers, may be the towering shadow of de Havilland's performance. Her portrayal was so definitive that studios reportedly balked at the idea of recasting. When a character becomes inseparable from the actor, sequels often become too risky to touch. Then there's the matter of tone. The Heiress wasn't built for lighthearted follow-ups. Its slow-burning psychological depth and morally ambiguous heroine were far from the Hollywood norm of the 1950s. Catherine wasn't easy to categorize, neither victim nor villain, but something in between. That complexity, especially in a female lead, made studio executives nervous in a conservative era. Some genre analysts have noted that films challenging gender roles during that period were rarely granted second chapters. Rumors have swirled for decades about what a sequel might have looked like. Others imagine it could have explored Catherine's life after betrayal, perhaps a new romance, perhaps a descent into isolation. One even imagines her inheriting her father's fortune and becoming a cold, calculating matriarch herself, but none of it made it past the idea stage. The Heiress remains a singular, unresolved masterpiece, one that dared to end not with redemption, but with power reclaimed. Gilda. When Gilda premiered in April of 1946, it didn't merely boost Rita Hayworth's star power, it sealed her place as a cultural icon. Already admired for roles in CoverGirl and Tonight and Every Night, Hayworth's turn as the alluring, mysterious Gilda solidified her legend. Her glove striptease to put the blame on Mame became one of cinema's permanent images, and the film itself redefined the femme fatale archetype. Yet despite its critical praise and strong box office, drawing more than $6 million globally, Gilda never received a follow-up. And that's puzzling, given the way the film wraps up. Gilda and Johnny, portrayed by Glenn Ford, exit into the night, but their internal wreckage remains unsettled. Noir often begins at this point, with damaged lovers fleeing a murky past. As noir historian Eddie Muller has remarked, the last scene stirs far more questions than it resolves. Hayworth and Ford shared undeniable on-screen chemistry and later co-starred in 4 more projects, though never again as Gilda and Johnny. Some say Columbia Pictures briefly toyed with the idea of a second installment, potentially involving post-war espionage or organized crime, but the timing was off. By the late 1940s, Hayworth's rapport with Columbia chief Harry Cohn had deteriorated, and her marriage to Prince Ali Khan took her far from Hollywood. Public fascination with her private life overshadowed her film roles. In later reflections, Hayworth acknowledged that Gilda was both a defining part and a burdensome label. A sequel could have delved into Gilda's transformation in another city, or chronicled Johnny's darker spiral into the noir underworld. The genre thrived on moral complexity, and their story had it in abundance. However, real-life dramas eclipsed creative prospects. As a result, Gilda remains a standalone legend, enigmatic, unresolved, and unforgettable. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.